Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the Assessment and Accountability Wednesday webinar for November 1st. I hope everyone had a happy Halloween. This is Anne-Michelle Neal. I'm the Accountability Specialist here in Assessment, and you'll be hearing from a few of my assessment colleagues today. But welcome and thank you for joining us. So to start out, all right, so to start out, I want to clarify just a little bit of what to expect for SAGE for administration this year for grades 9 through 12. So for 2017-2018 school year, 9th graders are required to take the SAGE assessments for the course instruction that they have completed. So if they're enrolled in a course that has a SAGE assessment, that assessment is required. The same goes for grade 10. SAGE assessments are required for students in courses when they complete the instruction. In grade 11, SAGE assessments are optional for students. This is because the ACT is required, so we have made SAGE available and optional for you to offer to your students. This is an LEA decision and should have been shared in your testing plan that you sent to us on September 15th. But if you do want to offer SAGE to students for data purposes and other reasons, we are going to make that available for you. For grade 12, SAGE assessments except for English Language Arts 11 are required. This is a part that has been confusing in the past. Do 12th graders need to take SAGE? And the answer is yes. If they are enrolled in a course that has a SAGE assessment connected to it, they are required to take that course unless it is ELA 11, because ELA 11 is optional. So there are cases also where a student may be retaking a course and has already taken that assessment. It's an LEA decision to have them take that assessment again. For example, if a student took geometry in 10th grade and retook geometry in 12th grade, they took the SAGE geometry test when they were in 10th grade, you can choose to have them take it again as a 12th grader. That's up to you.
Question. Can it be made available on a student-by-student basis for 11?
The question is, are tests available on a student-by-student basis? And I believe the answer is yes, that LAs can opt out and opt in for SAGE down to the student level as long as you include that in your testing plan.
Another question, can parents opt for only the spring assessment? So interim excluded.
Question about can parents opt for only the spring assessment and exclude interim? Interim is not on the opt-out form, so it's not included in the same kind of thinking about opt-out. I don't know that I have an exact answer to that question, but I will write it down and we will get clarification for you. Is that okay? Okay. Moving on.
How about opting out for just winter summative?
Opting out for only winter summative. Do you mean benchmark? By that?
Let's see. Brooke Anderson says, interim is on the opt-out form. You can opt out of any or all SAGE tests.
Again, I will need to do some homework about opt-out for interim because I am unclear on that. I apologize. I expect that if interim is on the opt-out form, parents have the right to opt out of whatever they choose. If they want to opt out of interim all year long, but take the spring summative assessment, they can do so. And if they want to opt out of the winter interim,
or winter summative, or spring
summative, that is something the parent would have to request via the opt-out form. hope that's a clear explanation. I will take this to Jared and we'll clarify for you in the next AD memo, because I know I'm not giving you exact and clear answers. Okay, thank you. So moving on, I'd like to discuss also SAGE administration for English learners for 2017 and 2018 and how this is changing. So the changes to how English learners are assessed in academics is statutory. It comes from ESSA. ESSA offered 3 options for how to assess English learners in academics. And based on stakeholder feedback and the work group that made recommendations for what should go into the ESSA plan for English learners, this was the method or the option that ESSA offered that made the most sense. And I think it is more clear and better practice than what we've had in the past. So the basic premise is that all English learners take all 3 tests. The exception to that is students who enroll in the U.S. for the very first time after April 15th, 2018. This is the EL student who comes to the United States in the middle of the testing window at April 15th or after. They don't need to test. But if all other students take all 3 tests, ELA, math, and science. So if they're in first year of enrollment, second year of enrollment, third year of enrollment, they take ELA, math, and science. But what does that mean for your school? If they're in the first year of enrollment, they don't count in accountability. That's a baseline year. The purpose for administering all 3 assessments is to establish that baseline, but it doesn't have an impact on your school's accountability. In the second year of enrollment, they will count only for growth in the accountability system, and the third year enrollment counts achievement and growth. So it gives time for you as a school to work with your EL students so that they can demonstrate proficiency after 3 years.
Question, what is the basis of changing first year in the U.S. so that they take the ELA basis?
The basis so the question is, what's the rationale for having first year EL students take ELA is to establish that baseline. We had long discussions about what that looks like for a first year English learner taking an ELA assessment and that they may struggle. However, the baseline data is valuable for calculating growth in the years following. Are there other questions? Okay, thank you. And I will hand the mic over to Scott Ross-Kelly.
No, I like to talk first.
You talk to me first. Kim in here.
And Kim's at writing training today.
Oh,
You can skip those.
okay. Never mind. This was Kim, and Kim is at a writing training today. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Science, engineering, and education standards. Thanks, Scott.
Hello, Scott Ross-Kelly here for science assessment. We want to let you know there was an announcement in the AD memo, but we wanted to show you the new practice clusters. We have not had any practice clusters in science because we've never had the banks be big enough to do it. Now on the SAGE portal, teachers can log into the training tests, and there's an option for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade where there's a separate section for science where they can actually sign up for those. I don't know if this will open it for us or not. Probably not. I want to show it to you so you can actually see it and share it with people. You see it there? Did it pop up?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So if you go to the SAGE portal and they got the little button for the training and practice test, this is published for anyone and everyone. It's published for the public. It's published for the teachers. If you click on that little button to go there, you get the training test sign in. It's a guest sign in. Students don't need their SSID, but if they uncheck guest user, they can enter it in with their SSID. You go in and pick the grade, and let's just look at one of the 6th grade ones, and it asks if this is you. Just like our regular tests, we have the accommodations available. The students have to set that when they actually go in, so they have to know they need those accommodations. Down here you can see the practice clusters for science. There's 2 for 6th grade right now, and they can just take and you can make the pointers bigger right now. There's something called streamline mode, which is for students that have a screen reader that they need to use to read the screen. It makes it so it's easier for that reader to use. You can change the print size and the color size that the kids all like to do. They ask if it's your test and they say yes. You can check and do a text-to-speech sound check, and when you hear the voice, say, I heard it. Here's the instructions. No one ever reads. They're really fun if you get a chance to read through them. And they get into the test. Now, this format for the test is what we call a cluster format. You'll see that the test is actually divided into 2 different sides. On the left side of the screen, we have something called the stimulus. And on the right side of the screen is a series of questions that the students engage in using the information in the stimulus. The stimulus always starts with a first sentence or a group of sentences that we call the phenomenon. And so here it just says a group of flamingos stand by a pond. The adults are pink, but the babies are all gray and white. And if you've ever been to the zoo and seen that, they're supposedly adorable. There's even a picture here to show them. They give the students information and pictures. They're going to use that information to engage in the science and engineering practices and then the cross-cutting concepts to answer the questions on the right side. On the bottom of the stimulus will always be a task statement where we're actually telling the students exactly what they're going to be doing. So we're telling them here they're going to create an explanation for the difference in color between the flamingos in the Caribbean and flamingos at the London Zoo. And so they go in and you just engage with the questions, and there's all the different question types that you may be familiar with assessment. Here they have to essentially do it. It's a grid item where they need to just put in what's the same for all the 4 groups and what's different. And if they click the right answers, then they'll actually get points for that. They have a multiple choice as to what's the likely cause for the color. They have a series of drop-down boxes where they complete the sentences, and they have to pick the right answers that actually matching and make sense based on the information that they've been given to engage in this cluster. And so as they go through and answer the questions, once they get finished, there's some options that are available that have never been available before on our test. You may see these little 3-line short little hamburger, we call a little stack of hamburgers in the top corners that allow them to speak the passage or highlight things. On the item side, there's a new button to select from. It actually says score item. And you can actually click that and bring up the scoring assertions for the question. And the students can do this because it's a practice test. We'd like them to see the scoring assertions. They can check their answers. They can see why they may have gotten it right or wrong. If they get it wrong, they get a big red X in the box, and they can read the scoring assertion to see why they've gotten it. And then just like any other test, it's only one cluster. If this was a real test, they'd have little arrows to go to the next clusters. But here they clicked end the test, and yeah, I've reached the end of my test, and I'm happy with it. And you reach the end, you hit submit, and after you submit the test, it actually gives the students their result. So they engaged in one test and got 6 out of a maximum of 6 points on that test. They go back and click on the item number. Say they got 4 out of 6 points and they did not check the score item. They can actually go back and see the test again, but they can't change their answers. But this is a great time for teachers to engage with the student to say, okay, what was it about this question that you felt was hard or difficult? What could we do to better answer this question? And have a good discussion in terms of how they're engaging with the cluster. One of the neat things with the clusters is you can actually change some things on the screen and make it full screen. So you can make the stimulus full screen, or the students can actually make the questions full screen and have a little bit more control over what they do. After they've had that discussion with their teacher or checked it out, then it's just logging out of the results. And it's all good to go, and we're done. And so that's the new practice tests that are up. We've gotten some feedback already from the field that that they're liking what they're seeing, that the students are liking it, and that the teachers are liking it. And so any questions, any feedback, we're always happy to get that. And so thank you.
Question.
Yes.
Since there is no platform for high school yet, are there any practice tests for the high school level?
No, okay, the question was, are there any practice tests for the high school level? For elementary and for high school, we do not have practice tests available yet, mostly because those original item banks in SAGE just were not large enough to pull questions out. We were fortunate and did some cross-developing with other states to get these questions, and I was able to pull from the pool of questions that we worked on with other states, the questions that align to our standards to create these for the clusters. Now, tomorrow, the board is going to be making the decision whether or not to open up development for elementary and high school standards. And so hopefully tomorrow we'll have the news that we're going to be developing new standards for elementary and high school, which means as we develop the clusters for those, or whatever we end up developing for those grades, we'll actually hopefully develop practice tests sooner than later. Any questions? Thank you. Now it's Heather.
All right. As far as those slides from Kim Rathke, there will be 2 Utah Compose trainings. They're coming up. We've had some feedback from teachers that they would like to have a briefing and a training on how to use and utilize Utah Compose. That training is going to happen on November 28th. So I don't see that on either of these slides, but if you go into SurveyMonkey, it does have that date down, and then there's a morning session and an afternoon session, and they're identical. So there will be 50 teachers per session, so if you have teachers in your area that are interested in that, that will be available for them. So now we're going to hit this one. So we've had some feedback from some assessment directors that we are in need of some clarification on our condition codes. So some of the slides I've compiled are from the writing trainings that we've been doing with teachers across the state. This one specifically was compiled by John Cohen. So as far as the conditional codes, the way it looks at it, as if you look at the student's writing, John Cohen wrote on the side, help, the statistician was eaten by a shark. The way it takes that is it takes out all the spaces and all the punctuation, pushes it all together, and then looks at it 11 characters at a time-ish. I think it was between 11 and 14-ish. You can count all those red letters and find out exactly. And then goes through the student's writing to find matches to either their own writing or to the writing within their the passage set that they were given. So if you go to the first one, this one's pretty straightforward. It's just duplicate text. In this circumstance, it's currently flagged at 70%, and if a match is found, that means that the student has copied 70% of their own writing. So an example of this is students holding down one key or writing a few sentences or a paragraph that's really strong, and then literally either retyping that same paragraph over and over and over, or copying and pasting that same paragraph over and over and over. We had some teachers at the end of last year when that conditional code was put on, frustrated because they felt that they had saw certain students who were flagged that had been writing the entire time. How could they be flagged for this conditional code when they were writing the entire time? And what we found was they were typing the entire time, but some of them were typing the same set of sentences or the same paragraph multiple times. So that is in place to continue. If it happens, that means that it's flagged and the student automatically receives the lowest score. And these are turned on for benchmarks and interims. And with benchmarks, you can actually go back and look at the student's response and be able to have conversations with individual students regarding what they produced and speak to that writing and change writing practice with that student in copying their own writing over and over. The second one, prompt copy match, is the one that we've had the most need for clarification regarding. In this situation, it's also 70%, and in this circumstance, they are copying at least 70% of their writing was directly copied from the passage sets that they were given. So in this situation, we've had some discussion regarding, can they restate the prompt? Yes, they can. They can restate the prompt, but if they don't write enough after that restate of the prompt, if it's only a few sentences, then they might get flagged for this. Because if 70% of their response is directly from those passages or from the prompt itself, the directions given to the student regarding what they're supposed to do with those passages, it could be flagged. Good writing in a situation where a student is writing in a rich way, we don't usually see this occur. Those that are getting flagged right now in 3rd and 4th grade for benchmarks and interims, we are actually going to be sitting down and having conversations about this month regarding whether that 30-70 ratio is okay for those grade levels, because we understand that in some circumstances it is developmentally appropriate and expected that a 3rd grade student would only write about 1 paragraph. So we're having a continued conversation regarding what we find from the field. So again, we are encouraging that the benchmarks be used across the board, but especially in those younger grades, as we are trying to determine if 70% is too much or okay for 3rd and 4th grade students. In this process, I'm showing you an example that is really blurry on the screen, so I apologize. We actually released a passage set and used it for this exact purpose and looking at this prompt copy match conditional code. This is an actual student's response from somewhere in the state, and everything you see highlighted was copied straight from the passage sets. So this student was able to come up with some great organization regarding what they found inside their passage sets, and the only thing that was theirs was the title, Parks, and that's what I think about parks, which I don't know if that's exactly what that student thought about parks. I think it was probably the authors of the passage sets included and what they thought about parks. One that's a little more tricky is this one, because we have an introduction, then we have some text that was cited, then we have a transition, one restatement sentence, another transition, some transitions, and then a conclusion. So what we've been doing as far as inside of our writing trainings across the state and working with teachers is really building a set of skills regarding what rich instruction looks like with students and what rich writing looks like, and really speaking largely to elaboration and how to use text and bridge what they cited from text through elaboration pieces to help their audience better understand what they're citing and why they're citing it. And with that, by the time we got to this slide, after building all of that knowledge, across the board, teachers were like, yeah, that's too much copying. That's too much copying and not enough of their own students' thinking and their own students' writing. So as far as what this looks like in interim and benchmarks, this is what it looks like exactly in the interim. You will notice that on the top line, it says the student's essay could not be scored due to a prompt copy match condition code. When they take the interim, it will say that verbiage, and the screen will look just like that. If it's in the benchmark, it will say something similar, but then you'll also have access to the actual student response to refer to and helping instruct that student on their writing. You'll notice on the second piece, opinion, argumentative, it says too few items attempted. That's because in this situation this year, with only one of the 2 pieces being assessed, you will always have one row that says too few items attempted, because the student will either get informative explanatory or they will receive opinion argumentative and not both. So just know that there will always be one of them that's a red line. The other one, it just depends on whether they got a conditional code flagged or not. So again, what we're doing in the writing trainings to help support and ensure rich writing, we're looking and really diving into prompt analysis, vocabulary integration from the passage sets and also from vocabulary instruction in the classroom. And then that evidence and elaboration piece, we're hitting strongly on explaining cite evidence, analyzing cite the evidence that we've cited, using figurative language, relationships or connections with the evidence cited, examples of that from their own experience or the implications of what that cited evidence means overall. So those are the things we're focusing on, plus transitions based on text structure. So that really dives into what transitions fit what type of writing the best, whether it's compare or contrast, or so on and so forth.
Question, are these codes explained in the SAGE portal?
We have put together documents that do explain them. As far as where they are exactly, I can talk with AIR to determine where they are in written form, so that we can make sure that that's out there as far as what they are. Also, whatever I have written here, you can use to inform your instruction at the school level as well. But I can look into that and get it out in the next AD memo. Any other questions? Okay, so if you need any support with this or you need further clarification, I am more than happy to talk to you about this in more detail. I'm your support for ELA SAGE 3 through 5 grades, DIBELS, and KEEP. Thank you so much.
Okay, that was the perfect lead-in to talking about ACT. This is Rebecca Peterson, and I had to kind of laugh just a little bit when she was going over the things that are evaluated for the DIBELS writing, or excuse me, the SAGE writing, because those are the same kinds of things that are evaluated on ACT writing as 11th graders, which just really emphasizes how important these skills are and how long the developmental process is for helping students become proficient writers. So with that lead in, we're going to talk about the ACT. So we've got a couple of different things we're going to hit regarding ACT. And as we go,
See your chat.
these are the 4 main categories. So we're going to hit dates and deadlines that have to do with ACT, some things regarding ACT preparation, and this is looking at the student level ACT preparation, and then the ACT writing, which is the hot topic right now, and upcoming trainings. Some of this information is being informed by the SurveyMonkey survey that I sent out, and thank you to everybody for filling that out and for also forwarding it to special ed directors and other people that are involved in ACT delivery for your students and your LEAs. I really appreciated the feedback on there and the input on what's helpful and what kinds of things would be useful. So with that, let's talk about ACT dates, so important things that are coming up. So by now, these are the things that you should already have completed or already have done. So somebody in your LEA, your testing coordinator, the person that you have named as your testing coordinator, should be receiving emails from ACT. If nobody in your LEA is receiving emails from ACT, that's a problem. You can email me information on who that ACT testing coordinator needs to be, and I can update that information with ACT, or a more direct route between now and November 6th, before PA Next goes live, there is a help desk number that is located on Utah's ACT website. And if you go there, you can call that help desk number and they can help get the coordinator information straightened out. Once PA Next, which is the interface that you use to manage your ACT information, once that goes live on November 6th, your district testing coordinator has administrative rights on that particular site, and they can update that information on there. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that you should have at least touched base with Utah's ACT website. On that page, there is a lot of information about where to start, where do you go next, what kinds of things should you be familiar with. There's a schedule of events, which has testing dates, it has training dates, it has items that you need to be aware of, and they're in a schedule, a table that is broken down in chronological order. There's also other information like technical manuals and things that are on that website. So if you haven't taken a few minutes to go and become familiar with that page, please log on. When you get access to this particular PowerPoint, which you can do either by waiting for it to be posted, or you can email Emily Sweeten and she can send you a copy of this PowerPoint. You can click on the link within the PowerPoint, or you can go to the address that I have posted on this presentation, and you'll be able to find the page. Also, you can go to USBE's ACT page, which is under assessment, and you can find the link there as well. So after reviewing the website, look at this, make sure you look at schedule events. The next thing really to consider is whether or not your LEA wants to test using paper or online. There was a handout at our last AD meeting, which was done virtually, where I put together a compare and contrast between paper and online. If you need a copy of that, you should be able to find it on our website, or you can email me and I will send it out to you. You can also find a compare and contrast on the ACT website as well. That decision does not have to be finalized until January the 12th. After January the 12th, you can't make any changes to that decision, but you have until then to decide. However, you may not want to wait until the 12th because that will be pushing your deadlines pretty tight. So if I were you, I would work to get that nailed down sometime in early December. Individual schools. So a question about, can individual schools choose to be online or paper pencil, or does it have to be the whole LEA? Individual schools can choose to be online. So within an LEA, if you have, say, one high school wanted to do paper pencil and another one wanted to be online, you can choose to do it that way. That will just need to be specified when you log into PA Next, which will open on November 6th. So up here on this coming up next, when you manage your LEA's participation and shipping dates, this is open in this window of November 6th through December 1st. So during that time frame, you'll need to log in, and that's where you will manage that information. So you'll select which schools are going to test using online or paper, and what your shipping dates will be if you're going to receive the materials 1 week before or 2 weeks before, and you can do that by school. Can we designate a group for online? On that one, I'll need a little bit of clarification on that question. So one thing with the online testing that you cannot do is you can't split between paper testing and online testing. So for example, you couldn't have part of the test be paper and part of the test be online. It either has to be that the students in that location are taking the paper test, or they're taking the online test. Let's see, last year we did 2 classrooms per high school for online, and the rest they did paper pencil. So you can choose to divide it up. You just can't choose to do half the test as paper, or half the test as paper pencil and then part of the test is online. So once students start the test, if they're doing a paper pencil test, the entire test is paper pencil. If the students are doing an online test, then the entire test is online. You'll notice when the PA Next system is open that you can go in and you can manage that information, and you'll be able to select how you want to administer the tests within your LEA, and you can actually specify that down from the LEA level as a whole, and then you can narrow that down if you want to, and you can get down to the school level, and if you want to, you can narrow that down even further into groups. So if you wanted to have a classroom, a group of students that are doing it online, you can do it that way. They just can't split between doing half the test paper and half the test online. So whatever you choose to do, it needs to be all online or all paper. Any questions on that? The second big date that is coming up, so the first thing that's coming up date-wise is make sure that you manage your LEA's participation and shipping, and that's through the Pearson Access Next website. And that's starting November 6th, which is coming up really soon, and the window goes through December 1st, and that's going to be really important. Last year that was optional. This year it is required. So everybody will need to manage and select what, if they're doing paper online and when their shipping dates are going to be. Second big date that's really important is requesting accommodations. So this is for students with disabilities or students who are English language learners. So students with disabilities are students who are served with an IEP or a 504. And the window for that is November 6th through January the 12th. The two biggest reasons that students had their accommodations requests declined last year had to do with inadequate documentation and also just not submitting the information within that window. In order to give all students the opportunity to receive the accommodations that they need, it's really important to make sure that those are submitted in a timely manner. There will be more training information about the accommodations and the application process coming up, and we'll talk about that on our training slide. Also, Tracy Gooley, who is the special education assessment specialist, and I are working on putting together some technical assistance information on the accommodations process with ACT. And I believe we have some helpful information that we're going to share with special education directors as well as with assessment directors about some of what I feel are improvements and in changes and updates in some of the communication with ACT about accommodations. And so with those changes, I think the process will be a little bit more transparent and equitable for students, particularly students with disabilities. So those are the two big dates for things that are coming up next. So let's talk about what works with ACT preparation. And I want to spend a little bit of time dispelling a myth. So one of the myths is that spending time using test prep programs results in high ACT scores for students. And so I spent a little bit of time doing some research because one of the concerns that I've heard is that teachers are abandoning instruction in the core curriculum to focus on test prep because of the fear that if they don't work on test prep, then their students will not do well on the ACT, and since the ACT is the evaluative measure for students who are juniors, that would that would reflect on on that summative score, that evaluation. And what I found is I think something that's really important to communicate with teachers. And I think it also has to do with the nature of the ACT. The ACT is not a knowledge test. It's looking at skills and types of thinking that are developed over time when students are exposed to rigor and high expectations. So in summary of all of that, if you wanted to kind of take that and summarize it, what makes a difference in high performance for students on the ACT is high quality core standard instruction. And the research shows that that yields better results when it's done during class time than spending time using intensive ACT preparation programs or ACT test prep practice or things like that during class time. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So some of the research, this is talking about class time in particular. So spending time, class time, on test prep does not make students more prepared for the ACTs. So the question is then, so what works? Challenging academic atmosphere, demanding curriculum, looking at this is kind of growth mindset information, teaching critical thinking skills, a good atmosphere. So this is talking about positive behavior supports, having a safe school environment, a high student on task rate. This one in particular was noted, and I think, looking at all of this, it makes sense when you're in an environment, and this makes sense in general, even looking at student achievement. When you have high on task rates, student achievement is also higher. So in research, looking also at these studies, in polling what did teachers and students think made a difference for ACTs, achieving a high ACT score, the primary perception was that it was due to test-taking skills. Any guesses on where this perception came from? I'll give you a hint. It actually has to do with marketing. Any ideas where that marketing came from? Came from test prep marketing companies. So it's actually not due to test-taking skills. The way that students actually gain a higher score on the ACT is through long-term skills. So these are things that are gained by being able to use these complex skills. So higher order analytical skills, problem solving, complex reading, data analysis, attention to details, ability to write well, which, as you saw in Heather's presentation, we're really emphasizing starting in elementary school. So all of these things are not things that you can cram, 4 Saturdays a year. These are things that are developed over a long period of time. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't some benefit to doing test prep practice, but substituting test prep practice during class time for gaining these skills does not work. And it perpetuates the myth that ACT is, students do well on ACT just because of test prep skills, which is not the case. So with that information, here are some things that are valuable for, so what do we do with this information? We know that in order for students to do well on the ACT, which actually is great because this is actually what we want teachers to do. We want teachers to use their Common Core standards, the Utah State Core standards to instruct. And through that instruction, using high quality, rigorous instruction, that those things are actually the items that prepare students for doing well in the ACT. So these are some things that can be done. So for example, in English class, ask students to improve a piece of writing. Have students explain how writers use tools like symbolism. So we're going for those higher levels of thought, the analysis, the critical thinking, the things that are going to be measured on the ACT. Have students discuss how culture, time, or place affects an author's writing. So you're asking them to draw conclusions, to look across different ideas, asking them to connect ideas in new or unique ways, and to justify their thinking as well. get them to debate the meaning of their readings. So you're not just pulling information. Let's see, have students rewrite papers or essays in response to student comments. This is another one where they're looking for their mistakes and then they're correcting them themselves. This isn't the teacher saying, you know, here's your mistakes, here's how you fix them. Maybe they model that initially, you know, so that students can practice it. But in the end, you want students to be able to do that. Here's a question from online. Research supporting a later start time for high school age students. Why is the ACT usually given at 8 a.m.? That's a great question. And actually, I'm going to write that one down so that I can follow up on it. Because I don't know why it's usually given at 8. And I will find out. I imagine it has to do with that that's when it's traditionally been done. I doubt there's any research to support that the ACT needs to happen at 8 o'clock. I will find out, and I will report back on that either in an AD memo or at our next meeting. So here are some things that can work for math class. So in math, so this comic I think illustrates what students tend to do. They tend to describe. So here's a picture of a graph. Here's a guy describing it. He doesn't actually know what the meaning is. He's not interpreting it. He's not synthesizing it to extrapolate data, you know, or meaning or compare it to something else. He's just saying, you know, this is what a mountain range would look like if you saw it through a tennis racket. So in other words, he doesn't really know what he's looking at, which is part of what makes it funny. But what you really want students to do is to discuss different solutions to problems, maybe different ways of getting to a solution. You want them to discuss how they did it, why they did it, what else could they do, and then make connections to other things. Also have them practice using graphing calculators to solve problems. But you're looking for them to use those connections to create connections to other ideas, to things they've learned before, and to other pieces of knowledge that they've already gained. And also as they continue, to have them look back and say, oh, I can see how this connects. Or to ask other questions. What other questions does this raise? But in particular, when students get something, they get an answer wrong, that's a great opportunity to not focus on it being wrong, but instead focus on the process, focus on the questions, and focus on that growth opportunity of what is the math telling you, how do you go through that process, how do you think about it, and really what is the analysis, and how do you know that it's not the correct answer, what does that mean, and how do you go about solving the problem. So let's talk about science. This is my personal bias as a previous science teacher. So looking at science, one of the difficult things with the ACT for me was that it doesn't actually ask a lot of questions about science from a content point of view. And that used to really bother me until I really got to understand that it's not about content. What it's about is understanding the process of science, understanding what do scientists do, but more importantly, understanding the analytical reasoning that goes along with science. So being completely preferential to biology and not understanding why everybody doesn't love cells and things related to biology. There are great questions that may or may not have anything to do with biology, in the ACT. But one thing that they do have is a lot of questions about can students read a graph and draw a conclusion from that graph or from a table that has data in it. And then can they do something with that? And those are the kinds of deep thinking skills that we want students to be able to demonstrate. So they need to be able to use evidence to support a statement, to support a position. We want them to be able to create hypotheses. So why do they think something is happening? So it's more than just if then, it's if then because. And the because needs to be grounded in a logical statement from either data that's been given to them, a graph that's been given to them, a paragraph of information that's been given to them in a passage that they've read, which ties directly back to reading comprehension. Writing lab reports where they're justifying their information. So all of these things are working together in those higher level thinkings. These aren't things that students are going to be able to cram in a test prep situation. These are skills that are part of the core standards and part of what students need to be working on in the course of their instruction. So any questions on that information before we continue on? So as far as test prep goes, there are some things that do make a difference on test prep. Now these are the things that are important to work on. I just want to make sure to clarify, I'm not saying don't work on test prep, but what I am saying is that the research does not support substituting test prep for high quality instruction. So don't give up high quality instruction to work on test prep. That doesn't work. What works is using high quality instruction, focusing on higher level thinking skills, critical thinking skills, and items that are actually measured. Items, though, that do need to still be practiced are practice taking an ACT test that mimics actual testing conditions. So this means with sections that are timed. The main benefit of that is giving students a chance to see what does this look like? You know, how do I actually answer these questions? What does it feel like? And also to practice the pacing. One of the challenges that students face is that they take too much time on a question, especially if it's a question where they get stumped. They think about it, they think about it, they think about it, and then they realize, oh no, I'm almost out of time. So giving them some test-taking strategies of what do I need to do to successfully pace myself to answer the questions that are in these sections to the best of my ability. Some of the strategies are giving them a way to identify keywords in questions, answer the easiest questions first, then going back to answer questions that they weren't able to answer easily, and using logic to eliminate options that are incorrect. So just to narrow down that field, and then also to make sure that they answer every question, because there's no penalty for guessing incorrectly. So, but that prep should not take the place of high quality core instruction. So you can find out more information about this on the ACT K-12 Educator and Administrator Resources page. On that page, there is a technical manual and a technical manual supplement. And this goes through all of the details about how they develop the items and what the scoring ranges are. And it's the assessment development technical details. There's some good information in there if you want to know, why they developed the items the way they did. There's also information in there on each section. So you can look at the English subtests, the math subtests, the writing subtests, and you can find more detailed information about each of those within those technical manuals, as well as the scoring and the rubrics for those. So now to what everybody's been waiting for, I'm sure. ACT writing. So let's talk about what does the writing test administration look like, how will it be scored, and how you can prepare for the ACT writing. The writing test is 40 minutes long. It will be administered after the rest of the regular sections of the ACT are administered. The test itself measures what are considered to be the necessary entry-level skills that students should have in order to be considered ready for a college-level composition course. So this is like a 10-10 level or a 100 level course. So we're not talking about having completed one of those courses, but being prepared to begin and enter that course with a degree of likelihood for being successful in that course. As a matter of fact, it's for being able to have they score it with the probability of 50% probability of obtaining a B or higher, and a 75% probability of obtaining a C or higher in an entry-level composition course. And that's when they're looking at what their mean scores are for scoring the writing test. And that's their predictive scoring on that. ACT has approved an extended break that schools can offer between the main part of the ACT, so they take the English and the math and those 4 main components, and then they've approved an extended break so students can use the restroom, they can eat something before they take the writing component if your LEA wants to follow that protocol. However, there's a caveat with that, which may or may not be worth it for your school to decide to use. So the keys are that students still have to be in a secured location. If they have something to eat or they have lunch or something, that lunch has to be within that secured location. So for example, students, if you're testing within a classroom that's been set up for that proctored location, the lunch has to be eaten in there. Students can't leave and go to the lunchroom. Students can't have access to cell phones or other items that would violate the testing security rules. So one option that may work well is for students to complete the other components of the ACT, take the extended break, everybody goes to use the restroom if they need to, get a drink, and then maybe there is a snack option that's easy for everybody to eat without it being the entire lunch. In that secured location, complete the writing test and then be done. That may be the easiest way to still give students a chance to have a break, but without it being the headache of managing lunch. So just know that that's a possibility. So question online, writing is after the other AC tests, and that is correct. So students will complete the other 4 components of the ACT, and then there's the 40-minute writing option that is immediately after those. Another option would be just to continue and just finish the 40-minute writing component and then be done. Let's see. Question: for the February 27th test, can students choose to opt out of the writing portion? Will their test still be scored? I don't have sound, so I'll need a text response. I will respond by talking and then I'll type. As of right now, students cannot opt out of writing. Writing is being provided for everybody. Will their test still be scored? So all tests will be sent to ACT. what will happen is that any student that does not complete the writing section will not receive an English language arts score. Let's see. On the English language arts score is different than the composite English score. So the composite English score is the one that students get if they just took the regular ACT without writing. And English language arts is the score that they get when they take the writing in addition to the English language arts. And let me see on the questions what the other part of that question was. My chat scrolled up too fast, so now I can't see the rest of that question. I know there was more to that question, so I'll have to scroll up and go find it in just a moment. But the on the ACT, on the questions as far as how long does each part of the ACT last, that will be in the testing coordinator manual that will be published by ACT to see if there are any changes. Typically, you know, when you start the ACT at 8, you'll usually end it around 11-ish to 12-ish. And then if you add in that writing time, it would end probably close to 1 in the afternoon. So on another question is, on the national test date, how is the writing portion handled, and is there an extended break? On the national test date, they continue on with the writing portion, and there's not an extended break. That's only at the state level. Also, a clarification on the difference between the national testing and the state testing. On national testing, students can choose on a student level whether or not to take the test because students are registered student by student. On the state level, that option is not there. So students are registered as a block, as a state. And so at this point in time, either all students are registered for it or all students are not. The ACT agency, or I guess company, is divided into 2 groups. So there's the national testing group and there's the state testing group. And we work with the state testing group, not the national testing group. The national testing group is a separate group. And they handle the national testing registration and things in a different way than the state contract testing does. So we don't have the ability to do individual student by student registrations like national testing does. Comment, so the test is going to end at about 1 and all we can give is snacks, no lunch break. Yes, unless you chose to manage a lunch break. So looking at the lunch break, that would be something that you could do within that extended break, but it would need to be within the secured location, which would mean that food would need to be managed within wherever the students are testing with the proctors. Students can't leave, just like they would be still within that contained testing secured situation. So in order to maintain the security of the test, students can't go out and talk to other students who are not testing. They can't be doing anything that might allow them to talk about test questions, things like that. Another question, it seems like it would be best to mimic the national test date and continue straight into writing without an extended break. And that is something that you could choose to do. So the extended break option is not mandatory, but it's an option that you could choose to do. So you could, if your LEA or your school decided that you wanted to continue straight into writing, you could do that. Or if you wanted to do an extended break with a snack, you could do that. Or if you wanted to do an extended break and manage a lunch within your school or your LEA, you could do that as well. Just know that the security of the students and the secured location has to be maintained during that extended break. Question, can some rooms have an extended break and some not? I'll have to check with ACT and ask them on that one. My guess is that that could be the case as long as the testing protocols were maintained. But let me check with the ACT on that one, and I will get back with you. So I'm going to just write that down. So the one difference that somebody pointed out is that typically food and drinks are not allowed in the testing room, and that is correct. So they wouldn't be allowed during the course of the test, but somebody can bring in food during the extended break so students could eat, and then the testing would resume after that. And it is correct that you do need to ensure that students who are testing writing would not interact with those who take a break. So any students who are testing have to be, the test security still has to be maintained. So students are not allowed to interact with other students. In essence, you're just providing the opportunity to eat something. But they still can't interact, they still can't use cell phones, they still can't do any of the things that are prohibited behaviors with the test security. And I will get more information on that. I would just keep in mind that any variables that you add in to your test proctoring on that day, like mixing some with extended break and some without, are going to add another layer of difficulty to any confusion or additional challenges that could arise. And it may be wise to not add that in there. So as far as the paper ACT goes, if you choose to do paper ACT, the writing will be on paper. If you choose to do online ACT, your ACT writing will also be done online. There is not the option to mix and match. So if you choose to do paper ACT, you cannot do online writing and vice versa. The writing assessment provides a prompt. That prompt describes an issue and provides 3 different perspectives on the issue. The student response question is paper provided. Yes, the students have an answer booklet that they will write their essay response in, so they will not be using their own paper. As a matter of fact, students can't have scratch paper if they're doing paper testing or online testing for that matter. The response that students will provide is to analyze and evaluate the perspectives that are given. Then they state and develop their own perspective, and then they explain the relationships between their own perspective and the given perspectives. So they're tapping into some of those higher level thinking and writing skills So this is not the persuasive essay that has been involved in past ACT writing. They've changed the writing prompt this year. And the writing scoring, students will receive 5 different scores. One of them is a subject level writing score. So this is the whole score. It's an average of the 4 domain scores. And the 4 domain areas are ideas and analysis, development and support, organization, language use, and conventions. And you can find that rubric that has all of the descriptions on the ACT writing on their website. As a matter of fact, in that technical manual, if you scroll to the section that talks about writing, it's also got the writing rubric in there as well. So how to prepare for ACT writing. This again goes along with the English and the science and the other things, but have students engage in discussions and debates, write with different purposes for different audiences, analyze issues, identify authors' perspectives and purposes, write with a time limit. In Utah Compose and also in SHMOOP, there are opportunities for students to practice this kind of writing. And embedding this within the content instruction is a great way for students to get that component of the high quality core standard instruction at the same time that they're working on ACT skills. So Utah Compose has great tools that are already developed to work on these things. And it will provide data as well. So here is a link for the rubric that shows how ACT writing will be scored, and also the actual web address so that you can just go and directly look at that rubric and find the rubric. Any additional questions on the ACT writing test? Yeah, let's talk about upcoming trainings. So there's some ACT sponsored trainings, and this is the information for these trainings will come out by ACT. So they'll send it to the person that they have listed as the testing coordinator. So November 10th, which is coming up pretty soon, there will be an online Q&A about testing administration in general. So that's where they'll go over things about PA Next and upcoming deadlines, other questions that people have. On November 16th, there will be an in-person training, and this will be after our AD meeting, which is our regular meeting. This particular training will be held at the Salt Lake District Office building. And we'll be spending some time looking at PA Next, looking at the TAA system, and going over and actually having you guys, we'd like you to bring your computers for that so that you can follow along and if you have questions as you're going through the actual hands-on information, you can ask those questions and we can help you navigate through the system. On December the 4th, there's another Q&A, and this one will be on testing accommodations for the ACT. So those are the ACT sponsored trainings. On that one of the things that ACT would like to know for the November 16th training, they're planning on bringing some handouts and items that you can take with you, but they would like to know how many people are planning on coming for that training. And I was going to create a really cool little poll to embed into this presentation, but my poll option went away. And so rather than mess up the technical stuff on this webinar, oh, here comes. We will send out a survey monkey. Think so. We'll send out a quick survey monkey. So you can just let us know if you're able to attend and are interested in attending the training on the 16th. So that way we can give them a count of how many people will be able to attend. Next option, which will also include on that same survey. So these would be trainings that we can provide. From the survey that I sent out previously about what kinds of tools or things would be useful for AD. So assessment directors, teachers, and special ed directors, there were two main themes that showed up, actually three. So one of them was, how do we help teachers to be able to use core instruction to prepare for the ACT, which was awesome because that aligns with the research that shows what works in preparing for the ACT. For right now, we're creating some crosswalk guides to show the intersections between core standards and the tested skills. So there are 2 dates that I can do some training on that. One is December 12th and the other is January 12th. So in that same survey, the survey monkey that we'll put together, I need to know what days people would be interested in attending a training on that, and also the degree of interest in that. And the second training is a how to prepare for your testing day. And this to me is kind of like, if you've ever read the books, How to Expect When You're Expecting, or something like that. This is how to proctor when you're going to be proctoring, or how to prepare your proctor for proctoring, or how to prepare your test day for testing. So just how to get ready for administering the ACT. You know, what are all the things that you need to consider for that testing day? Not necessarily the items that are on the ACT checklist on their website, but just the little nuances of what kinds of things we need to have prepared ahead of time, you know, things stapled together, pencil bundles, the things that will make that day go more smoothly. Let's see, question about, can we offer the 11-16 training via WebEx? Yes, it will be offered via WebEx. And we can offer these USB-E trainings via WebEx as well. So they'll be in person and WebEx. On the December 12th training, what time will it be, and will it be online? The time would be from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, and that would be the same time, December 12th or January 12th. And it would be both in person and on WebEx. And then the third item that showed up on the interest survey was really just about making sure people knew about dates. So what needed to be done already and what's coming up. So I'm really just trying to focus on that, on AD memos and on meetings like this. But I didn't feel like that was necessarily a training item, so we'll just keep that information coming. But if there are other areas or other things that would be really helpful for a training, please let me know what those would be so that I can help with that. But those first two are the ones that came out on that survey. If there are any other things, though, please let me know so that I can help you as you prepare for this and as you help your teachers, administrators, and other people who are working with the ACT. So as always, if you have questions, if you have suggestions for me, I would love to hear from you. My email is rebecca.peterson@schools.utah.gov. So are there any final questions before we're done? Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. If you would like an immediate copy of this presentation to share with anybody, you can send Emily Sweeten a quick email and she can share or send this presentation to you so that you have a copy of it. Otherwise, it will be posted when all the accessibility items are completed, and you'll be able to find it on the website. The ACT writing is not optional as of right now. All students will be taking the ACT with writing. So thank you, everybody. and have a wonderful day. Glad you